Okay, it's 9:30. I'll call the meeting to order. I'll look for my clerk for roll call.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the December 6th special council meeting. I'm Jennifer Connor, Clerk of Ramara Township. I'll begin with roll call. Mayor Clark.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Bell.
Present.
Councillor Snatch.
Present.
Councillor Fisher is absent. Councillor Tuyu. Present. Councillor Goff.
Present.
Councillor Bell.
Present.
Thank you.
This meeting is being streamed live on the Township of Ramara YouTube channel. Be advised that by attending a public meeting of the Council of the Township of Ramara, you are consenting to your image, voice, and comments being recorded and will form a part of the public record. The chair, CAO, and/or clerk have the discretion and authority to terminate or interrupt the live streaming in exceptional circumstances where the content of debate is considered inappropriate to be published. Thank you.
Okay, with that, our first meeting today is a special council meeting dealing with some planning matters. So we'll start out with the agenda and additions dated December 9th, 2024, that the agenda dated December 9th, 2024 be adopted as presented. Moved by Councillor Goff, second by Councillor Tuyu. Questions on the agenda? All in favor? That is carried. Do I have disclosure of pecuniary interest for anybody? Can't imagine so. So now I'll call the public meeting. I'll open it and call the public meeting to order. Again, I have to ask, is there disclosure of pecuniary interest in any of the files? Not seeing any. So the public meeting, as required under the Planning Act and pursuant to council policy, council is holding a public meetings to deal with 3 planning proposals. Zoning bylaw amendment file Z4/24, 131 Cortlandt Street. Official plan and zoning bylaw amendment file OP4/24 and Z5/24, 3819 McCrae Park Road. And zoning bylaw amendment file Z6/24, 4195 McCrae Park Road. Please be advised that if a specific person or public body files an appeal of the decision of the Ramara Township Council in respect to the proposed official plan amendment applications, but does not make oral submissions at this public meeting or make written submissions to Ramara Township Council before the proposed amendments are adopted, the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss all or part of the appeal. The purpose of this meeting is to inform and provide the public and members of council with an opportunity to ask questions, express views with respect to the proposal. Council will consider all comments and submissions received, and staff will work in an attempt to resolve outstanding concerns, if any. Staff from the planning department are present and will be writing down any comments. The clerk will now advise on the manner of giving notice and give an explanation of the proposed amendments. We will begin with file Z4/24, 131 Cortlandt Street. Jen?
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice of this public meeting and complete application for this application was sent to all appropriate property owners and agencies on October 10th, 2024, and a sign was posted on the property in accordance with provincial regulations. Comments of no concern and no objection were received from the township's fire, building and infrastructure departments, and from the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority. No written comments were received with respect to the proposed from any residents or property owners. The amendment will have the effect of requiring an increased rear yard setback for all buildings and structures of 15 meters on 2 lots granted provisional consent on the subject property. The amendment is a condition of provisional consent for files B-424, B-525, granted by the Committee of Adjustment on August 13th, 2024. The increased setback is a mitigation measure recommended by the environmental impact study submitted with one of the consent applications.
Thank you. Jennifer Stong, Township Planner, will provide the background of the planning process to date.
Good morning, everyone. So this is zoning bylaw amendment file Z524 for the public meeting. The subject property is 131 Cortlandt Street. It's south of the intersection of Balsam Road and Cortlandt Street, just north of Mara Provincial Park. The subject property was granted provisional consent on August 13th, 2024 by the Committee of Adjustment to permit the severance of 2 lots to the south of the existing dwelling. The application for consent was supported by an environmental impact study undertaken by Zygoterra Consulting. The zoning bylaw amendment is a condition of the provisional consent to ensure that the mitigation recommendations contained within the EIS are implemented in order to protect the adjacent significant woodland. The purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw will change the current zoning of VRVC VIN holding to a special exemption VR zoning that will require a minimum rear yard setback for all buildings and structures of 15 meters. The village residential provisions currently allow a 7.5 meter setback. The application was deemed complete on October 1st, 2024. The notice of complete application and public meeting was circulated on October 10th to all applicable agencies, property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, and a sign was posted on site. There were no concerns from building, fire, or infrastructure. The Conservation Authority provided comments noting the application is consistent with natural heritage policies and that they have no objection to the amendment, and there were no comments received from the public. The current use of the property is a single-family dwelling on the northern portion of the property. The area subject to the amendment is the southern portion of the property that is subject to the consents. The property is designated settlement in the County of Simcoe official plan, is designated village in the Township of Ramara official plan, and is zoned VRVC VIN holding and is within the village of Atherley, an area that is slated for residential development in the zoning bylaw. Report BP 5524 that's attached to today's public meeting reviews the planning policy in depth as it applies to the application, and I'll do a highlight today. So decisions on applications under the Planning Act shall have regard for matters of provincial interest, which are outlined in Section 2 of the Planning Act. In this case, the protection of ecological systems, including natural areas, functions, and features, the adequate provision for a full range of housing, and the appropriate location of growth and development. Provincial Planning Statement 2024 came into effect on October 20th of this year. It replaces the previous PPS 2020 and also the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Section 2.2 of PPS 2024 states that planning authorities shall facilitate residential intensification, which results in a net increase in residential units. And Section 4.1 of the PPS states that natural features and areas shall be protected for the long term. The property is mapped within the boundary of the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. This development is not considered major development and is within a settlement area of the municipality. The natural heritage matters have been reviewed under the LSPP. There are no wetlands within any distances that would trigger anything additional, and the mitigation measures are being implemented to protect the adjacent woodland feature. The County of Simcoe official plan designates this property as settlement. The property directly to the south is designated as Greenlands. Section 3315-6A requires development adjacent to Greenlands designation to have a natural heritage evaluation or an EIS accompany the application to make sure that there's no impacts on those natural features. Section 383 states that the objective of the Greenlands designation is to improve the quality and connectivity of woodlands. And Section 3.5 of the county OP states that an objective of the settlements is to focus growth and development within the settlement areas. The Township of Ramara zoning bylaw designates the subject property as settlement area and is known as village. Section 4.1 of the township's official plan states that objectives in the settlement area include directing planned residential growth to settlement areas, while also protecting the natural areas and features and conserving natural area functions within our settlement areas. Section 5.2 of the Township OP has the property mapped with some supportive and complementary areas and corridors. And so any development within 50 meters of that overlay triggers an EIS. The EIS shall recommend measures to prevent, minimize, or mitigate impacts, including buffers, and providing areas for enhancement where appropriate. The Township of Ramara zoning bylaw currently zones the property with that special VRVC VIN holding provision, which is in the settlement area of Atherley. The property is within an area that is slated for residential development. The zoning bylaw amendment will have the effect of increasing the rear yard setback to 15 meters for an appropriate buffer area for the adjacent woodland. The property currently has a holding provision, which is proposed to be removed as part of the zoning bylaw amendment. The holding provision has been placed upon the lands because they've been identified as a future development area. The subject property is 1.84 acres in size, and the owners received the provisional approval to allow for the creation of the 2 new lots. So the removal of the holding is appropriate in this case. So in summary, the application seeks to ensure the protection of the significant woodland feature by requiring that increased 15-meter setback for the rear yard for all buildings and structures. The recommendation is from the EIS that was submitted with the consent applications to create 2 lots without having any impacts to the natural heritage features adjacent to the property. The zoning bylaw amendment is that implementation mechanism to ensure that that buffer area is established. Based on the review of the application, it is the opinion of staff that the application has regard for matters of provincial interest in Section 2 of the Planning Act. It has demonstrated consistency with provincial planning statement and has demonstrated conformity with the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, County of Simcoe Official Plan, Township of Ramara Official Plan, and Zoning Bylaw, and can be considered good land use planning. The recommendation today is that, subject to any comments received at today's meeting, that the proposed that the approval of the zoning bylaw amendment application Z524 is approved as presented, and that council enact a bylaw to rezone the lands from VRBC VIN holding to VR special exemption within the zoning bylaw amendment to require the 15-meter setback. The bylaw will be presented on today's council meeting following this public meeting. And that's all for me. The owners are here as well if you have any questions.
Well, first, the public will now have an opportunity to speak. And when you speak on this application, please provide your name and address and come up to the microphone. Anybody from the public got any concerns or comments? Not seeing any. So council, any questions from council? Straightforward file. Okay. If any person wishes to receive notice of the passing of the amendment, please forward your address and phone number by email to the Township Planning Department at planning@ramara.ca or complete the sign-in sheet at the front door. If you do not provide your full address, you may not receive notice. This concludes the first public meeting, and any comments from the public or council, if noted, there were none, will now be considered before making the decision on this matter. Thank you. Do you want the motion now, Madam Clerk, or do you want me to do all the motions at the end? Okay, so the motion I have is that council receive report BP 55-24 dated December 9th, 2024 regarding the zoning bylaw amendment file Z 6/24. Should be 4/24, should it not? 4/24, and that subject to any comments received at the public meeting zoning bylaw amendment as written be forwarded to the next council meeting on December 9th, 2024 for consideration. Moved by Councillor Goff, second by Councillor Bell. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We will now move on to the second public meeting, file OP 4/24. Okay. I'm getting two. Okay, this one's 4/24. So the last one was 6.
No, you're correct. The last one was Z4/24.
Yes.
This one is OP4.
Oh, okay. Thank you. OP 4/24 and Z 5/24 at 3819 McCrae Park Road. Madam Clerk will now advise on the matter of giving notice and give an explanation of the proposed amendments.
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice of this public meeting and complete application for this application was sent to all appropriate property owners and agencies on October 21st, 2024, and a sign was posted on the property in accordance with provincial regulations. Comments were received from the township's fire, infrastructure, and building department. While the building department had no concerns, the fire, infrastructure, and planning have outstanding concerns regarding the proposal, which the applicant is seeking to address. Comments of no concern were received from the Chippewas of Ramara First Nation, Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, and Enbridge Gas. Comments were also received from the County of Simcoe Planning Department regarding the requirements of their official plan. One written response was received from Mr. Randy Richer of 4180 Glencoe Beach Road, citing concerns with sight lines, inspection, safety, neighborhood character, and the agricultural area. The amendments will have the effect of amending the existing highway commercial official plan designation and site-specific highway commercial zoning to allow for the year-round storage of 33 recreational vehicles with reduced front, exterior, interior, and rear yard setbacks.
Thank you. Jennifer Stone, Township Planner, will provide a background on the planning process to date.
Great, thank you. Make sure it goes up. Perfect. Okay, so this is for the public meeting for official plan amendment file ZOP 424 and zoning bylaw amendment file Z 5-24. The subject property is known as 3819 McCray Park Road and is at the intersection of Muley Point Road and McCray Park Road and is approximately 0.9 acres in size. Surrounding uses include agriculture to the north, east, and west, and residential to the south. The purpose and effect of the amendment will be to allow for the year-round storage of 33 recreational vehicles with reduced front, rear, interior, and exterior side yard setbacks. The application was deemed complete on October 16th of this year, and a notice of complete application and public meeting was circulated to all applicable agencies, property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, and a sign was posted on the property. The property is currently designated agriculture in the County of Simcoe official plan and has a highway commercial designation in the Township of Ramara official plan, and has a special policy highway commercial exception 1 within the zoning bylaw. The property currently houses a variety of vehicles for storage. Historically, the property contained a restaurant, convenience store, and the winter storage of a maximum of 20 boats. There were 2 zoning bylaw amendments done on the application, one in 1986 and one in 1989. In 1986, the zoning was amended to allow for a restaurant and public spaces. And then in 1989, it was amended again to allow for a convenience store and winter storage of up to 20 boats. The uses above all ceased in the properties were demolished, or the buildings were demolished in about 2011, and the property remained vacant until 2022 when gravel was brought into the site and the grading was altered. Bylaw enforcement visited the property in 2022, and the proposed amendments intend to bring the property into conformity with planning policy. On the screen before you is the site plan that was submitted with the application. It shows the aisles for 33 recreational vehicles. And it shows the different setbacks to those exterior side yard and front yard with the rear and the interior. So in this case, the front yard of the property is considered Muley Point Road, so it's slightly less frontage. So that's a 5-meter setback proposed. And then from McCray Park Road, they're showing 5.4 with then 2 meters on the interior and the rear. From the circulation of the application, the building department cited that they had no concerns. They did note that any structures greater than 10 square meters would be subject to a building permit. The fire department raised concerns with the reduced setbacks, specifically the southern interior lot line, with concerns of possible impacts on fire protection and possible fire spread to the adjacent residential lot. And there is no area around the parking space that's non-vegetative. The infrastructure department had concerns with the reduction in setbacks to the road and possible impacts to site triangles. They noted that nothing can be within the 10-meter setback that would obstruct the view. There were concerns with the ability to manage stormwater with the reduced setbacks, and a stormwater management brief will be requested if the proposal continues to include reduced setbacks. There were also concerns with the snow storage locations at the ingress and egress of the lot. The Conservation Authority provided comments noting that the application is consistent with natural hazard policies, and they had no objection to the proposed amendment. The application is not considered major development under the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. The county provided a comment letter summarizing the criteria in the County of Simcoe official plan that needs to be satisfied in order to allow for a non-agricultural use within a prime agricultural area. The comments state that the township should confirm that the criteria in PPS 2024 and the County of Simcoe official plan have been adequately justified. Note that the county is the approval authority for official plan amendments at the township. Enbridge Gas provided no concerns, and the planning department provided concerns within the comment matrix, and these were all returned back to the applicant. Planning had concerns related to the planning justification report and the agricultural impact assessment not adequately addressing some policy requirements in both the PPS and the county OP to support the establishment of the non-agricultural use. There were concerns raised with the reduced setbacks and the ability to implement the appropriate buffer strips, including the mitigation recommendations for screening that were suggested through the agricultural impact assessment done by Beacon Environmental. Planning staff have met with Morgan Planning as late as of December 4th, and Morgan Planning is working to resolve the outstanding comments. We also received a comment from Mr. Randy Richer. It's up on the screen. So he stated, I personally find the fences too close to the road and it makes it unsafe to manage the intersection, as you need to pull into the intersection past the stop sign to be able to see up and down the roadway. This happens when turning from McRae's Park Road onto Muley Point Road. Traffic on Muley Point Road is traveling between 80 and 90 kilometers per hour. It is really difficult to place. It really is a difficult place to turn at, since they have put up the fencing and started storing trailers and equipment. Also, if this is rated as agricultural land use, why are they using for storage facility business? They are storing more than just boats and trailers as stated in the application. The corner is now unsightly and out of place with the adjoining agricultural properties. Staff report BP 5824 reviews the application against applicable policy and the review status. The applicant is working with the township to address the outstanding concerns, and I will again just give a high level review of that report. So similar to last time, applications under the decisions on applications under the Planning Act shall have regard for matters of provincial interest. In this case, would be the protection of agricultural resources in the province, the orderly development of safe and healthy communities, and the appropriate location for growth and development. Provincial Planning Statement 2024 states in Section 4.4 that prime agricultural areas shall be designated and protected for long-term use for agriculture. This property is within a prime agricultural area. Section 435 allows for some non-agricultural uses in prime agricultural areas, including limited non-residential uses, provided that the following 4 criteria are demonstrated. The land use does not comprise a specialty crop area. In this case, it does not. The proposed use complies with the minimum distance separation formula. The proposed type of use doesn't trigger an MDS. And then there is an identified need within the planning horizon identified in the official plan as provided for in policy 213 for additional land to accommodate the proposed use. And number 4, the alternative locations have been evaluated, and there are no reasonable alternative locations which avoid prime agricultural areas, and there are no reasonable alternative locations in prime agricultural areas with lower priority agricultural lands. So sections bullets 3 and 4 are the ones that we are currently working with Morgan Planning to address. As stated, this proposal is within the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan boundary. There are no natural heritage features identified on the site, and the property is well outside of the shoreline of Lake Simcoe. The County of Simcoe official plan in section 3612 also outlines the required criteria for non-agricultural uses in prime agricultural areas. Bullets 1 through 4 mirror PPS 2024, and then 5 through 8 are additional. So again, I've just bolded the 2 that we're still working with Morgan Planning on, being the proposed use requires minimal site alteration as determined through pre-consultation with the local municipality and approval authority, and the proposed use shall be compatible with surrounding agricultural uses, or in a location that is separated from prime agricultural operations by physical features and demonstrated to cause minimal disruption to surrounding areas. Note that the buffer strips and the those mitigation requirements will be reviewed under site plan approval. It's just important, if we're looking at reducing setbacks, ensuring that that will actually be possible through the site plan. The Township of Ramara official plan designates the property as highway commercial. The highway commercial designation is to accommodate small area and individual commercial activities that are located on main roads and intersections to provide convenient access and exposure. Land uses include eating establishments, motor vehicle service stations, convenience establishments, and arts and crafts establishments. The current designation also allows for the winter storage of 20 boats on the property. The proposal is to intensify this by altering the storage to recreational vehicles instead of simply boats, and allowing for year-round storage and an increase from 20 to 33. The zoning bylaw for the Township of Ramara zones the property as highway commercial exception 1, which the exception 1 is highway commercial permitted uses, plus you can also have the boats because they're not permitted as of right in the highway commercial zoning. The setbacks up on the screen before council show the proposed and the reduced setbacks. The front yard is required to be 10 meters. The proposed is 5. Exterior side yard also 10, proposed is 5.4. Rear yard setback also 10, proposed is 2. And then the interior side yard setback is 5 meters with a proposal of 2 meters. Section 222 of the zoning bylaw states that outdoor storage cannot be located with any required front or side yard setbacks. It also must be visually screened from streets and any abutting residentially used parcels. Section 25 requires buffer strips between sensitive land uses and the storage lot. So this would be between the interior side yard for the residential property and the establishment. And so it requires a 2-meter wide buffer strip with a 1.6 meter tall screening adjacent to the lot line where that buffer strip is required. So this could be an unpierced hedgerow or a fence that would be right on the lot line. And then the rest of the 2 meters can be used for vegetation. There is concern regarding the reduced setbacks with respect to sight lines, land use compatibility, buffer stripping, and stormwater management. The reduced setback will result in the recreational vehicles being brought closer to the roadway than any structure is permitted within that area. So township staff, as I stated, have met with Morgan Planning on December 4th to review the outstanding comments. Morgan Planning will be submitting an updated proposal based on the feedback to address those outstanding policy matters. So once this is complete, a report will be forwarded to the next available committee of the whole meeting, including any comments received at today's meeting. Thank you.
Okay, this one's going to take a little more time. Jonathan Pock, Senior Planner for Morgan Planning, is present and will now have an opportunity to add anything further to the information provided. Jonathan, come on up.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I did have a presentation, and good morning, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Jonathan Pock, Senior Planner at Morgan Planning and Development, here on behalf of our client, Krish Vadavalu, of the owner of the subject property. I did have a presentation prepared. There was some overlap, so I won't go through those, and I'll just ask to skip through those slides. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is the location of the subject property. Just a couple of things I'd like to draw your attention to is the location being south of Highway 12. And I'd just also like to draw your attention to the location in proximity to Starport Marina, Marina Del Rey, as well as the provincial park. Our client stores currently various recreational vehicles on site, and his main clients or the clientele of those people using this property are typically owners are keeping their boat at the marina or utilizing a camper trailer or recreational vehicles at the provincial park. So I'd just like to keep that in mind. Next slide, please. Probably skip through this one as well. Thank you. So this is just an aerial image. A couple other items I'd just like to draw your attention to. You can see how the recreational vehicles are generally very close to the lot lines. And as illustrated in, I have a later slide in the proposed site plan, the landscape buffer strips proposed around the perimeter of the site would have the effect of pulling those recreational vehicles back further from the road and establishing that vegetative buffer and increased separation from the roads. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, this is the proposed site plan. You can see in green is those landscape buffer strips. There's 2 existing entrances today, and there will be continued to be 2 proposed entrances. The entire perimeter of the site is fenced and will continue to be fenced. It's a chain link fence. It's not a type board fence if you've driven by the site. So visibility will be maintained. We have discussed, and I'll get to a later slide with those comments received to sight lines along the intersection. Our client is open to moving the fence back from the intersection portion to further enhance those sight lines and make sure that there's visibility maintained. Next slide, please. As Ms. Stong mentioned, the current zoning of the property has a site-specific zoning exception attached to it. It allows for the winter storage only of 20 boats. So we're seeking through the amendment that be increased to not only boats, but recreational vehicles such as campers and watercraft and what have you. And that would be on a year-round basis, not only in the winter time. So effectively what's occurring there on site today. Today there might be, more than 33 recreational vehicle storage areas, but through the zoning, we would seek to reduce that and maintain that on site. From the township's official plan perspective, it is a highway commercial. We do recognize that there's a disconnect between the county official plan being agriculture and the township's official plan being highway commercial, and that's by virtue of the history of the property used as a restaurant, convenience store, and was reflective of those previous uses. Next slide, please. Kind of went through this already, but the intent of the official plan official plan amendment before you this morning is to allow for the outdoor storage, which is currently not permitted in the township's official plan. This is just a schedule showing that the proposed official plan amendment would apply to the entirety of the property. Next slide, please. I've kind of already mentioned this, but the intent of the zoning bylaw amendment application is to seek for the year-round recreational vehicle storage for a maximum of 33 recreational vehicles. We did realize that the spaces are quite long. There would be no intent to double stacking recreational vehicles or having more than one recreational vehicles per parking space as illustrated. Next slide, please. And again, this is just a zoning amendment schedule showing that it would apply to the entirety of the property. So through our application and included in the agenda was our planning justification report. Due to the timing of the submission of the application and comments received, we do realize that we need to provide some amendments to that planning justification report based on the new PPS that came into effect prior to or subsequently coming into effect after our application submission was made, and we will be providing that under separate cover. So as Ms. Stong mentioned, there was an agricultural impact assessment provided as part of our application submission. Just a few conclusions that I'd like to draw your attention to is that the proposed development won't take out any agricultural land that is currently not being used. It's a gravel yard today. And as mentioned, there was that disconnect between the county official plan and the township's official plan. And the review and intent of the agricultural impact assessment was triggered due to the designation in the county official plan being agriculture. And within the provincial documents being the PPS, as well as the county official plan, there are criteria for non-agricultural uses in a prime agricultural area. And those criteria were evaluated in our planning justification report and will be further bolstered, and more information will be provided based on the conversation that we had with township planning staff and their consultant. Thank you. And just the second last bullet, there have been no upgrades made to the property nor has the property been used for an agricultural use in quite some time. So the proposed OPA and zoning would seek to maintain that official plan designation and zoning on the property that would allow for highway commercial types of development. Next slide, please. So again, as Ms. Stong mentioned, there was some comments that we received from the township's planning department as well as internal departments. And they're also their planning consultant. We have met with them. We've reviewed those comments. We intend to address those comments through our updated planning justification report and provide a comment response matrix before coming back to council for a decision on the application. With respect to the comments received from the public, we recognize that there was comments about fencing and sight lines and the agricultural designation. The fencing is one item that I've spoken to where it's a chain link fence. There is an intent to pull those further from, or pull a portion of the fencing from the intersection to maintain those sight lines. With respect to the agricultural designation, I kind of touched on that already with being the disconnect between those two policy documents, and we have evaluated the criteria in our planning report. So just in conclusion, again, to facilitate the use of the property, an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment are required. We will be providing an updated planning justification report through our amended application before coming back to council for a decision. Again, the current zoning of the property permits up to 20 boat storage within the winter months. We're simply seeking to increase that to 33 spaces on a year-round basis and not limit it to boats, but other recreational vehicles such as campers and watercraft and what have you. That concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, I'd do my best to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. The public will now have an opportunity to speak. When providing your comments, please ensure that you state your full name and address for the record. Anybody want to come on up, sir, to the microphone? Then there's a button right in the center on the front that'll turn it on. Yes, there you go.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Randy Richer. Hi, Dana. From 4180 Glencoe Beach Road. I've got a few concerns with this property, most of them related to safety, concerning car vehicles on these roads. I'm on that road quite frequently, and it's basically a blind corner now with that fencing up to the corner. The stop sign on McRae's Provincial Park Road is probably about 5 feet back from the corner of the fence. So what happens as you approach that corner, you stop at the stop sign, you now have to creep past the stop sign into the intersection to be able to see if there's any traffic coming from the south direction on Muley Point Road. Now, I don't travel on Muley Point Road from that direction too much, but from the other way, from the people traveling down Muley Point Road, it's also a blind corner. They can't see cars coming down McRae's Provincial Park either. So for me, that's probably the biggest concern. I think that we should make sure that we honor the setback regulations. I'm not quite sure what that means. I'm not an engineer and that type of stuff, but as far as when I'm driving up there, how much I'm going to see, I still think with a lot of vehicles stored on there, it's going to be a bit of a blind corner for people traveling up Muley Point Road. But as far as for where I'm traveling, I think that setback on the Muley Point Road and the McRae's Provincial Park, at least if those two lines are set back properly, that we'll be stopping at a stop sign where we can actually have visibility to the road. A couple of other points that I would like to make is that they keep referencing recreational vehicles. And as the gentleman had expressed, there's been other types of things stored there over the last year. In fact, there's still automobiles there. There's big totes of, I think it's firewood, that type of stuff. There was some construction tractors and that type of stuff there for a while. So I would suggest the council that going forward with this, you should at least have them define what is a recreational vehicle, because I don't know if that means if somebody has a car that they drive in the summer, is that a recreational vehicle? I'd also like to ask council and planning, I guess, if you can look at the terminology of 33 spaces. Even though I know that the gentleman said they plan on not storing more than one unit in a space, I would prefer that the wording on this says 33 units or vehicles, not spaces, because what people plan isn't always what ends up happening. So anyway, but my main concern really is the safety on that corner. And again, as the gentleman had mentioned, we've got Starport Landing, we've got Marina Del Rey, we've got the Provincial Park, we've got a lot of cottagers around here. So there's a lot of traffic there for probably 3/4 of the year. So it's a busy little intersection. And some people have been known to go a little bit faster than the speed limits on some of the county roads out there. So I think, having a blind corner like that is definitely not something that we should do. I think we're just asking for trouble with that. So And that's it. I just wanted a chance to view or send my views in as far as what I had given to you in writing.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot.
Any other comments from the public? Come on up to the microphone, your name and address, sir. That would be great. Yes, just push the button again. The red light will come on. Center one. There you go.
Paul Piplato, 4118 Glencoe Beach Road. I'd just like to piggyback on what Randy was talking about. I made some notes during your presentation. You talked about the intention, or the intention was made to move the fence back, the setbacks. Are we going back to the 10 meters? That is in our rules, policies, guidelines that are set out by our planning in the township? We are?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Can I get you to step over here, Jonathan, up to the microphone beside Jen, and then you can answer any questions that come in. And
Thank you. Sorry.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Through your worship, Paul.
Yes, yes.
So yes, through conversations with our client, we are exploring getting closer to that 10 meter setback, and there would be an increased setback from the intersection lines. I think through discussions with township staff, the zoning bylaw doesn't regulate the placement of fencing. I think you can go almost right to your property line on fencing. But our client is open to pulling that further back, as well as the setback to those proposed spaces.
Okay.
Closer to that 10 meter setback.
Okay. But not to that, not to what is written in our.
Yeah, correct.
And-
We're still exploring updates to try to get closer to that 10 meter setback.
Because with that, sorry, go ahead.
So maybe just further to that, the amendments that are requested for those reduced yard setbacks may not need to be included in through the amendment, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, so you're saying that the encroachment that's there, you're gonna bring them back, but maybe not to the point where that's what's in our building structure. In the planning structures.
Correct.
Okay. All right, because with that, with them being out so far, you are parking, or there is parking for large recreational vehicles, which do, as mentioned, hinder that sight line for when you come up to that, because they're right at the very corner. They're not placed back or well within the property. They're there, which makes it even harder to see and a safety concern. So hopefully that gets looked at. And campers, watercraft, and you made mention whatnots or what have yous. What exactly are whatnots or what have yous for vehicles? We have recreational vehicles, and then we have watercrafts. And again, that was kind of brought up as well. At one spot, there was 8 snowmobiles. There was far exceeded 33, and right now it's zoned for 20 potentially. So it's just been, I guess it's just been blatant disregard. It's just gone without hearing counsel or without bringing things forward. It was graded without permission. Now he's taken advantage, or they've taken advantage and encroached on the property, or on taken away for the sight lines that are in place. There was one application here that was 15 meters for the buildings that were being separated. That was brought up. I heard that. And now we have 10 in place at that corner. It just goes on and on. Anyways,
On
that's
that, I just want to get the one answered. What the whatnots?
yeah, sorry, thank you.
Sure. Through your worship.
Appreciate it. Sure.
Thank you. So maybe I'll just take a step back, that our client, it has been operating in contravention of the bylaw, and enforcement was on site. We were retained to help him through this process, to help bring it more in compliance with the zoning bylaw. So we do recognize that the recreational vehicles, or the broad spectrum of vehicles that have been stored on site, are right to that property line. The intent through the application is to increase those setbacks from the road and pull those call them spaces for recreational vehicles further from the lot lines, and establish a landscape buffer along the property lines. Through the zoning and through the comments that we've received, I do see benefit in defining what a recreational vehicle is and including that in the zoning, and that's something that we would be open to. Whether it just be limited to, boats, camping trailers, not necessarily the automotive vehicles that might be in derelict condition or, junky looking types of things. Like it would be, these are spaces that would be used by users of the provincial park that, or the marina that have these vehicles, Sea-Doos, watercraft, what have you. So
Thank you.
we can look to define that through the zone.
Okay.
We'd be open to that.
Because you did mention that you're not trying not to double stack, but again, I made mention that there was 8 snowmobiles on one specific spot. There's a unsightly tractor sitting right at the edge of the road now. It's just, yeah, if we could look at saying that if you're going to do 33 spots and then it's 1 per spot, can we keep to that?
How I would think it would be if you had 1 Sea-Doo sitting on the ground, that's 1 vehicle. However, if you had 2 on a trailer, I would say that's 1 vehicle. Probably, and if you had 4 snowmobiles on 1 trailer back then, I would consider 1 vehicle. Is that kind of how we look at it? But if they're sitting independently, then they would each be considered a vehicle. I'm looking at my planning staff for an answer on that.
Yeah, we can, so recreational vehicle is already a defined term in the zoning bylaw. And it means a currently licensed motor vehicle used as transportation and for personal or recreational purposes, including a motorized mobile home, a trailer, but excludes a snowmobile. So we can work with the definition to make sure that there's clarity. That was one thing that came up in conversations with Jonathan last week, was talking about, making sure that it's 1 vehicle, not spaces with multiple vehicles, understanding the condition of the site. So the intention is that the amendment would create something that the owner can work with that is, conducive to the area. And then there would be a site plan agreement as after the amendments are, assuming the amendments are supported, there would be a site plan agreement that would put in and a site plan on file so that if there were the stacking of vehicles, there is an implementation mechanism.
Okay, sir. Any other questions, Paul?
Advertising. Again, this zone or this area, we have advertising on there right now. There was a for sale sign for Sea-Doo and lifts. There is an advertisement there, 2 big ones, large wooden ones for a home or renovation company. So this is multitude of uses and not what it's apparently applied for. It just goes on. Where does it end? Randy had mentioned that there was bags of wood, and they're still on site. There's large bags, almost giant leaf bags or garbage bags, but they're full of wood I would say if you were going down to the provincial park to buy some wood, like it's not being used for what it was proposed to be used for or brought forward to be used for. And where does it end? And is there any repercussions for not staying with the proposal? I don't know, and I would have to leave that.
All right.
With council.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, no, that would be a bylaw enforcement. And again, we know they're not in regulation right now. And that's why, but again, when we'll have to put in the terms exactly what is stored there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for hearing me.
Any other questions from the public? Come on up, sir. I just turned the mic off, but you'll have to turn it back on. I'll need your name and address. Yeah. You're good.
Rolly Witten, 4126 Plankville Beach Road. My concern is the same as the other people from our street, but the entrances to the 2 entrances right on the corner, at times there's 2 or 3 cars parked, are waiting to get into the lot. People are driving by and you almost got to drive around the car. So you really need to look at the entrances. They are too close to the corner on both sides. You either make one further down or just have one entrance somewhere, but, and if the setbacks go in further, they may be able to park their car in to get it off the street. But to me, that's even a bigger concern than some of the other issues we have here.
Okay,
That was it. Just to add to the other guys. Thank you.
thank you. So now I'll look to council for any questions or concerns. Councillor Snutch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Jen, is there any height restrictions, like, rather than getting into the type of recreational vehicle there? Can't think of one, but if you had one of those trucks that transports cars and it's double stacked, is there a height restriction on what can go in with this, with the storage units? Have you considered a height restriction?
There's nothing like that in the zoning bylaw that restricts the height of a recreational vehicle. There's minimum lengths that sort of for boats and things like that, but there's nothing that defines the height of a recreational
And could we put a height restriction in? Anyways, I'll let you think about it. I'm just bringing up the point at this point. I'm trying to, there was a couple comments made about the people who are using that storage. You say the boats from the marina. Does that mean these boats are stored there in connection with the marina or in competition to the marina? You said the people from the marina store their boats at this spot.
Go ahead, Paul, if you're able to answer that.
Sorry, thank you, Your Worship. I can confirm that. I'm not sure if they're, property owners within the township or if they're users of the marina specifically, but I just wanted some users of this property keeping their boats on the property may keep their boat at the Starport Marina during the summer months.
Okay. Next question to Jen, and we went through this with another similar situation where we had setbacks and zoning in the same. So I'm just trying to get clarification. When someone wants a zoning change, they go for the setbacks at the same time rather than get the zoning change and then go to the committee of adjustment later to get the setbacks? I'm a little confused.
Jen?
So through the chair to Councillor Snutch, the zoning bylaw amendment will include any variations to the provisions of the zoning bylaw as part of the application. Are you meaning like if the setbacks are not approved through the zoning bylaw amendment, that the applicant could then go to committee of adjustment to vary the setbacks alternatively? Is that the question?
Most setbacks go through the committee of adjustment, correct?
As long as it can be deemed minor. So there's the 4 tests under the application.
So this is considered major, and that's why we deal with it at council rather than with the committee of adjustment?
Well, the zoning itself is not permitted. So you can't vary something that's not permitted, right? So the zoning here is being amended to ask for the increase in number and the year-round storage. So it all gets included in one application because it would be costly and kind of inefficient to apply for a zoning change and then go to the committee after and have 2 separate applications, 2 separate processes. So it's looked at in a holistic way.
Okay. And how many, how many vehicles do you believe are on the property right now?
Through Your Worship, I'm not too sure. I can confirm with our client. Haven't driven past there in a few weeks, so I don't know currently how many, but we can confirm.
There was in excess of 20. I think we all know that. And that's why the application has come in to amend. Yeah. So we don't know, Dave.
Yeah, I did take some pictures on the way over. But yes, there are access. I would say access. Right.
Okay, that's all I have at this point.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Councillor Bell. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. More, it was just to sort of piggyback on what Councillor Snutch was asking about height. And I wondered if the way that it could be written would have, so an RV obviously is in height taller than a snowmobile trailer or a Sea-Doo trailer, for example. So I wondered if it could be set up so that the interior spaces are where your like by height, the interior spaces have the higher vehicles and those exterior spaces have the lower vehicles? Like, is there a way to do it that way and like playing on the height so that we always know that those large vehicles will be to the interior and then not interrupting sightlines on the two roadways? It's just a thought.
Any, yeah, sorry, I cleared the mic just to get rid of that one. You have to turn your mic on again.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. And then I guess my second thing was I heard the comment about signs and then so advertising being placed on the fence lines. And I just comment that we don't have a sign bylaw. So therefore, that aspect of it would still be revisiting. We did have a sign bylaw prepared over the course of the 24 year, but it was not implemented at the time. So it's maybe something that we would need to review to look at. And that sign bylaw specifically was looking at residential, but at the time we hadn't considered, this wasn't a piece of it, really was a conversation around commercial and what uses were appropriate. So.
Where they're located. We just need you at the microphone, correct? That's what the clerk was going to say, but we heard the comment was that the signs in place right now are causing a sightline issue, but go ahead.
So the signs are an issue because it is affecting the sight lines. And there's two now, but the way things are going with this property, they'll be surrounded by signs. We like driving down 75 in the US. So we got to do something about the sight lines and what signs. Thank you.
Thank you again. Yep. I got a response, Paul, and then I'll go back to council.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one thing, like one thing that we can explore through the site plan agreement, if the official plan and zoning is put in place, is wording in a site plan agreement to speak to the location of and types of signage. And that would be implemented through a site plan agreement on site. The other component about sight lines, on our site plan, you'll note that we have accommodated for what's called a sightline triangle or daylighting triangle. And that's something that's required at the intersection of two major intersections and doesn't require buildings or structures to be located within that. So we have shown that we've complied with that. And like I said, the client is open to even pulling back the portion of the angled fence from that intersection to maintain those sightlines. So we've heard the comments and we're willing to work with township planning staff. And
I'll finish with council. I will go back to you again, if I may. Dana, councillor to you.
Yeah, I know that the area had been resurfaced with gravel. Does the owner have any plan of paving that lot? I just have concerns for the drainage and the reduced footprint for that. Thank you.
Paul. Or Jonathan, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's no plans to pave it. It would remain gravel.
Okay. I certainly see the idea of going from 20. I mean, once the buildings were removed, there is more space on that lot than originally. And I think I understand the zoning because I'm old enough to remember when this was a gas station, which would have been an agriculture zoning, could have remained in effect. So that's probably why the county has its zone differently. My concern, much like the individuals, is I got to have a strong look at that sight line. It's got to be clear and open because there's large vehicles that come out of McCrae Park Road that, people pulling trailers themselves. I know there's still a farm down there that comes out pulling wagons, and that sight line is crucial when you're pulling out the high rate of speed of the folks coming down Muley Point Lane, though I think there's something on the agenda to look at that later today, but it is an 80 zone. And as we know, people tend to travel more than 80 when they're heading, and those sight lines are critical. Did you have something to add, Randy? Come on back up.
Just because there's been discussions as far as the setback and moving it back, I just want to reiterate that I feel it's important that the setbacks on Muley Point Road and McCrae's Provincial Park Road are to the current standards. Even if there's lower height vehicles, there's a lot of people driving in cars, and even myself, I'm in an SUV. Even if there's a runabout boat or something sitting there, you still can't see past through that. So I think, I appreciate what you're looking at with that sight triangle. I think that's the right way, but I think we need to make sure that total fence line is within the set standards. That's all. Thanks.
Any other comments from council? Councillor Snutch?
Just one. We talk about the signage. I think the answer to this is going to be no, but can we make this a condition on no signage, or can we restrict the signage, or is that something totally different that we can't do with the zoning change? I mean, we could end up with having them selling firewood, used boats, new boats, tires, all that type of stuff.
I'm not sure that we can necessarily regulate. I'd have to look into that and get back to you.
All right,
I'll make
thank
sure
you.
that we have some answer for that, but I'm thinking no, but I'll have to look.
Okay. There's no other questions from council, then,
Sorry, if I may,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just wondering, gentlemen, when you fill out the sign-in sheet, can you please make sure that you put your email address with the Canada Post strike? Like because you've been here, you will get notified, of subsequent happenings on this one. So if you could just make sure your email's in there, that would be excellent. Thank you.
get the nod from everybody. That's good. So if any person wishes to receive notice of the adoption and notice of the passing of the amendments, please forward your address and phone number and email to the Township Planning Department at planning@ramara.ca or complete the sign-in sheet at the door. If you do not provide your full address, you may not receive. And again, we need the email because of the strike. This concludes the second public meeting, and any comments from the public or council, which there were, will now be considered before making a decision on the matter. Thank you. So you want that motion as well? I have a motion that the council receive report BP 5824 dated December 9th, 2024 regarding files OP 4/24 and Z 5/24, and the application be deferred back to staff for further processing, and to allow the owner time to address the outstanding comments. So moved by the deputy mayor, second by Councillor Goff. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And we now move on to the third and final public meeting for file Z 6/24 at 4195 McCrae Park Road. The clerk will now please advise on the manner of giving notice and give an explanation of the proposed amendment.
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice of this public meeting and complete application for this application was sent to all appropriate property owners and agencies on November 7th, 2024, and a sign was posted on the property in accordance with provincial regulations. Comments of no concern and no objection were received from the township's fire, building and infrastructure departments relating to the zoning bylaw amendment. The Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority provided comments noting consistency with natural hazards policies and had no objection to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment so long as the technical natural heritage comments provided are addressed. No written concerns were received with respect to the proposed from any residents or property owners. The amendment will have the effect amending a portion of the property that is currently zoned rural to shoreline residential and natural area protection. Concurrent consent files B-1224, B-1324, B-1424 were granted provisional approval by the Committee of Adjustment on December 3rd, 2024 for the creation of 3 new residential lots. The zoning bylaw amendment is a condition of that provisional approval.
Thank you. Jennifer Stalling, Township Planner, will now provide the background of the planning process to date.
Thank you. So this is a public meeting for file Z6/24. The subject property is 4195 McCrae Park Road, which is east of the intersection of Woodland Drive and McCrae Park Road. The surrounding land uses include shoreline residential and natural area protection. The subject property is 84 acres in size, with roughly 4 acres of the property actually subject to the amendment. The purpose and effect of the amendment will amend the current zoning of rural on a section of the property to shoreline residential and natural area protection. On the screen above you, you can see the one section is going to change to natural area protection adjacent the current natural area protection area, and then the shoreline residential zoning there on the northwest side. The application was deemed complete on October 30th of 2024, and a notice of complete application and public meeting was circulated on November 11th to all applicable agencies and property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, and a sign was posted. This application is concurrent with consent files B12, 13, and 14, 24, and the purpose of those applications is to create 3 new residential lots. The Committee of Adjustment gave provisional approval of these consents on December 3rd, and this zoning bylaw amendment, along with the consent agreement, register legal description, and general financial obligations that are common for all consent applications, are all listed as conditions of consent. Circulation comments for the zoning bylaw amendment application itself, from building, fire, and infrastructure, there were no concerns. The Conservation Authority provided comments noting that the application is consistent with the natural heritage policies and had no objection to the amendment as long as the technical natural heritage comments that were provided to the applicant are addressed. The applicant has been working with the LSRCA to review and address the natural heritage comments, and they actually sent in a submission to the Conservation Authority last week to address them. The County of Simcoe had no concerns with the application and the Greenlands refinement, as long as the Conservation Authority and the Township were satisfied with the application. There were no comments received from the public. Currently, the property is vacant. The area subject to the amendment is the northwest corner of the property, and then the area kind of around the consents. There's a portion of the cleared area of the field that is going to be zoned natural area protection, which will turn into a vegetative protective zone adjacent the wetland and the woodland. The property is currently designated in the County of Simcoe as Greenlands in their official plan. It's designated shoreline residential in the Township of Ramara official plan and is zoned rural in the Township of Ramara zoning bylaw. Report BP 5624 reviews the planning policy in depth as it relates to the application, and I again will provide a brief highlight today. Decisions on applications under the Planning Act shall have regard to matters of provincial interest. In this case, it is the protection of ecological systems, including natural areas, features, and functions, the adequate provision of a full range of housing, and the appropriate location of growth and development. PPS 2024 Section 2.2 states that planning authorities shall facilitate residential intensification, which increases residential units, provide for healthy, integrated, and viable rural areas by supporting building upon rural character and conserving biodiversity and considering ecological benefits provided by nature. And Section 4.1 of the PPS states that natural features and areas shall be protected for the long term. The proposal is not considered major development under the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, but it is outside of a settlement area. The Lake Simcoe Protection Plan states that key natural heritage and hydrologic features are heavily protected within the LSPP. Development within 120 meters of one of these features is subject to a natural heritage evaluation and environmental impact study. That study is to demonstrate that there are no negative impacts to the features. The Conservation Authority have been involved in the technical natural heritage review of the application, taking the lead. They've conducted both site visits and reviewed the studies. And as I stated earlier, they are currently working with the applicant to address the outstanding natural heritage comments, as this is a regulated feature. County of Simcoe currently designates the property as Greenlands in their official plan. Section 3810 of the county's OP identifies the natural heritage system as the Greenlands designation, which includes habitat for endangered species, significant woodlands, and wetlands. Section 3821 allows for minor amendments to the Greenlands designation through local planning applications, as long as they're supported by an EIS. The EIS in this case must confirm that there are no features within that area. When the refinement is accepted, the Greenlands line sort of gets pulled, and then the adjacent designation becomes the new designation. So in this case, the adjacent designation is rural. So as long as the county, approves the Greenlands refinement, then we have to look at the application like it's in the rural designation instead. So Section 3.7 of the county official plan states that the objectives of the rural area include recognizing, preserving, and protecting the rural character and promoting long-term diversity and viability of rural economic activities, which includes limited residential development. The Township of Ramara official plan designates the property as shoreline residential. It is within sort of the Joyland Beach shoreline residential area. Section 4.3 of the OP states that shoreline residential area objectives include recognizing the shoreline residential areas for both seasonal and year-round occupancies and endeavoring to maintain that character. Section 5.2 has mapped core areas and corridors, which identifies provincially significant wetlands on the subject property, and any development within 120 meters of this overlay triggers an environmental impact study. The environmental impact study shall recommend measures to prevent, minimize, or mitigate, including buffers. The Township of Ramara zoning bylaw currently zones this section of property as rural. The zoning bylaw amendment will have the effect of zoning a vegetative protective zone to natural area protection to preserve and protect the adjacent wetlands and woodlands on the property. It will rezone the appropriate development area to shoreline residential, which will allow the creation of 3 new residential lots, as well as identify an appropriate area to build a home on the retained. The proposed lots to be created meet all of the provisions of the zoning bylaw. So in summary, the application seeks to ensure the protection of the adjacent significant woodland and wetland by rezoning a vegetative protective zone from rural to natural area protection. It will further allow for a zoning of shoreline residential, enabling the creation of 3 new lots within the shoreline residential area at the community of Joyland Beach. The EIS submitted by Terra Story Environmental identified the limits of the features and their appropriate vegetative protective zones. And this has been peer reviewed by the Conservation Authority, and the technical comments are currently being addressed. The creation of limited residential lots in the rural area is supported by policy, and the character is being maintained. So based on the review of the application and subject to the Conservation Authority technical comments being addressed, it is the opinion of staff that the application will have regard for matters of provincial interest under Section 2 of the Planning Act, will have demonstrated consistency to the provincial planning statement and demonstrated conformity to the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan, County of Simcoe Official Plan, Township of Ramara Official Plan, and Zoning Bylaw, and is considered good land use planning. So the next steps would be with conversations with the applicant and the Conservation Authority ongoing. Staff would recommend that any decision on the application be deferred at this time until those comments are resolved. Once they are resolved and everything is complete, a report will be provided to council with recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, do we have Vanessa online? Okay, Vanessa Simpson, Senior Planner from Morgan Planning, is present and will now have an opportunity to add anything further. The information provided. Whenever you're ready, Vanessa.
Council, staff, and members of the public. I do have a presentation, but you know what? Ms. Stongs really has covered all the bases, and I would just be duplicating information that you've all heard already. So as noted, last week we were at the Committee of Adjustment. We did present our application to create the 3 proposed lots during that time, which was conditionally approved, which has led us to the zoning bylaw amendment application that we're here before you today, requesting to rezone the vacant portion of the property that is untreed to shoreline residential to support the consent applications. This will ensure that the residential lots conform to the SR zone, and we meet the zoning provisions that are outlined in the zoning bylaw. In addition, as already noted, we have completed an environmental impact study and EIS. We're working with Terra Story, and we're ongoing conversations with LSRCA to address all concerns that they have. We've met with them, we've provided written comments, and right now we're just waiting to hear back from them. And that EIS has recommended a portion of the property to be rezoned to the NAP zone to further enhance a protection area around that environmental feature, those wetlands and those woodlands. And we have no concerns with being able to provide that 30-meter vegetation protection zone. I believe that really wraps up the key items of this application. And if you have any questions, I'm more than willing to address those and discuss them with you today. Thank you for your time.
Okay, the public will now have an opportunity to speak. When you provide your comments, if there's anybody, we will need your name and address. Any concerns? Not seeing any, so I'll come over to council then for any questions or comments from council members. I will say this file had come in 10 years ago. It would have already been approved. Unfortunately, when the natural heritage mapping was applied by the province, it included this little corner, which quite frankly, it should not have. Everybody was fine with the natural area protection being included in the natural heritage, but this field should not have been. I'm not seeing any comments. So if any person wishes to receive notice of the passing of the amendment, please forward your address and phone number by email to the Township Planning Department. And of course, leave your email for us at planning@ramara.ca or complete the sign-in sheet at the door. If you do not provide your full address and email, you may not receive notice. This concludes the third and final public meeting, and now comments from the public and council, if noted, will now be considered before making a decision on the matter. Thank you. And the motion I have is the council receive report BP 56-24 dated December 9th, 2024 regarding application Z 6/24, and the council defer the decision regarding the application Z 6/24 until such time as the outstanding Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority technical review comments are received and addressed. I believe they received them, but they haven't addressed them yet, correct? So moved by Councillor Goff, second by Councillor Tuyu. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And I will wrap this meeting up. Presentations and deputations, we have none. Consent agenda, none. Items requiring immediate attention, we have none. Just the confirmatory bylaw, that bylaw 2024-85, bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the special council meeting held on December 9th, 2024 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Moved by Councillor Goff, second by Councillor Bell. All in favor? That is carried. And lastly, that we now adjourn at 10:46 a.m. until December 9th, 2024, immediately following our committee of the whole. So adjourning till this afternoon. Moved by Councillor Goff, second by the deputy mayor. All in favor? That is carried. So why don't we take a break and